matter to you the most? Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Tuesday morning edition, Air Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. And all I gotta say is Hoosiers, Indiana, your national champions. I'll be real. Today's show is going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to talk a little bit about the game on Monday night. We're going to talk about just the historical aspects of it, greatest team ever, greatest run ever, all of the insane things about it. I also think with Indiana, it brings up the conversation of, can this be done anywhere? If you're a Kentucky fan with Will Stein, Vanderbilt post Diego Pavia, can anyone do this under the right circumstances? We'll discuss all that. And then from there, I will say this, the way too early top 25s are starting to come out. I already got gripes, and we're 12 hours removed from the season, so we will go ahead and get into those. By the way, should mention, I came down with a little something on Monday. So this is Torres' MJ flu game. If you get a couple coughs, a couple sneezes, a couple sniffles, we're just going to have to fight through it like Fernando Mendoza trying to pick up a big first down. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. Make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips and videos going up every single day. By the way, we're about 600 subscribers away from 70,000 people. So if you got about 600 friends in that Rolodex, send them the Torres Pod, send them the Torres YouTube channel. Let's get to 70,000 subscribers here. I think we can do it by the end of January. Also, before we get started, make sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your audio podcasts as well. The show goes up shortly after we get off air here on YouTube. Finally, before we get started, you know what we got to do? We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our ticketing partner. We got to thank SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. Okay, so college football's done, but you know what that means? College basketball is just getting started. Maybe you're a Kentucky fan. You're fired up. Your team is actually good. Maybe you're an Indiana fan saying, you know what, Coach Sig is going to bring those positive vibes to the basketball court. UConn, Arizona, whatever. Guess what? If you need tickets, there is only one place to get them. It is the SeatGeek app, America's #1 ticketing app. Over 28 million. I always feel like Dr. Evil when I say it. 28 million downloads so far. And what I love about the SeatGeek app is a couple of things. One, every ticket on that app, they tell you right there, is it a good ticket? Is it not a good ticket? What do you need to know? All you got to do is download the SeatGeek app. Every ticket rated 1 through 10, green dot or red dot. Green dot means go ahead and purchase that bad boy. Red dot means it might not be quite what you're looking for. But what I really love about SeatGeek, it's pretty straightforward. They take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. If you use promo code Torres, that's promo code TORRES on the SeatGeek app, you get $20 off your first purchase. It's that easy. Any ticket, any game, any show, any concert, if they are selling tickets to it, SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. SeatGeek app, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. Any ticket, any show, any game, SeatGeek.com, SeatGeek app, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. With that said, it's a busy Tuesday morning in the world of sports. There is no more time to waste. So let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, bluntly, this could be pretty much the most straightforward show that we have done all year. And we are going to spend the majority of the show talking about the thrilling game Monday night, Hard Rock Stadium, Miami, Florida, and all of the fallout and ramifications that come with it. We will get to your chat, share your thoughts. Is this the greatest run you've ever seen? Is Indiana the greatest team that you've ever seen? We will get to all of that in a minute, but let's talk about Monday night's game. Indiana, again, just the unbelievable 27-21 victory. As I said to lead the show, Hoosiers? The Indiana Hoosiers are your national champions. Unbelievable story, unbelievable finish. Let's just go ahead and dive into this from all angles. First of all, as far as I'm concerned with this game, a couple things stand out. One, I really, and if you listen to Sunday's show, my final score prediction was 24-20, Indiana win. So I had Indiana winning, Miami covering. My best bet was the under of 48.5 at the Circa Sportsbook. That worked out very nicely for me. Indiana gets the win. This was one. I'll be transparent. I never saw the world and never really understood the argument that Indiana was going to blow out Miami. I honestly thought that the people who were saying Indiana was going to blow out Miami and, it's an inevitability were people that probably had never watched Indiana before the Rose Bowl against Alabama, right? The Alabama game was like one of the highest rated, maybe I think it might be the highest rated non-NFL game we've had in quite some time. So I think millions of people tuned in expecting to see Alabama maybe win that game. Indiana destroys them. Indiana destroys Oregon. But what I said was this, is I picked Indiana because I said it was really going to come down to a few things. I thought physically Miami could match up with Indiana. Indiana had been bullying Alabama, bullying Oregon. I did not think that was going to happen with Miami. But counter to that, I also said Miami makes a lot of self-inflicted mistakes. They beat themselves quite a bit. And you're just not going to have Indiana beat itself. And so, listen, I'm not bragging. I get stuff wrong all the time, but it's basically exactly how the game played out. Early on, really about the first 3 or so quarters, I thought Miami actually largely controlled the game. It's kind of crazy. Miami actually finished with more total offense than the Indiana Hoosiers. It's worth noting that, obviously Indiana scored a special teams touchdown. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you look at this game, I actually thought for a good chunk, you know how in the Rose Bowl, the offensive line and Pat Coogan in specific was named game MVP? I said, if Miami wins this game, Ruben Bain or the defensive line has to be the MVP because it was the first game all year, maybe Ohio State, you could say this. Indiana really couldn't do anything on offense at all. And so what did this game come down to? It came down to the little things. It came down to the little plays. It came down to execution. And this is where Indiana has thrived all season long. Fernando Mendoza is always talking about we're a play-by-play team. It's about the little things. We're process-oriented. That's exactly what this game came down to. Not beating yourselves. The little plays turn into the big plays, and you get the win. A couple things that stand out. One, the blocked punt, right? Like we're all going to remember the Fernando Mendoza run, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The blocked punt, if they don't block that punt, they probably don't win that game. Special teams breakdown by Miami, but it's also a credit to Indiana. All the little things. Beyond that, the Fernando Mendoza touchdown run, again, iconic play. What I think if people are going to forget about that is a few different things. One, first of all, Indiana picked up a 4th down before that on that drive, right? So Indiana at the time, it's easy to forget, was up 17-14. If they don't get the 4th down, Miami gets the ball not quite at midfield, but probably the Indiana 35 or 40, and they could drive the length of the field to take the lead in that moment. But then even with the Fernando Mendoza touchdown run, again, everyone is going to remember the spin, the hit, the dive for the end zone, getting hit again, holding on, extending the ball. He doesn't fumble. Like, unbelievable play. I saw the jokes, but they're all true. Is like that picture will hang in every man cave in the state of Indiana outside of West Lafayette for the next 100 years. But Indiana fans will remember this. I don't know how many other people will. It was 4th, and it wasn't just the great run. It wasn't just the extension. It wasn't just the hit that happened. It was the fact that it was 4th down. And if he doesn't convert that, all of a sudden, guess what happens? Miami again gets the ball up, trailing 17-14 with 9 minutes left and have the chance to drive the length of the field. So it was unbelievable. It's also worth noting the next possession, Indiana converted 2 3rd downs. Obviously, that would have set up punt situations if they did not get them. And so Indiana gets the victory. And it really just, to me, simply came down to every single game, every single moment, this team always executed. Really quickly, I do want to talk some big picture. This is what it means from a 30,000-foot view. I want to give half a second of credit to Miami, man. Like, listen, I don't know what the discourse is with Miami, and I know there's a lot of Michael Irvin was on the sideline, and this. Listen, Miami. First of all, unbelievable story. Like, it's easy to forget now. There was like real debate. They're not getting into the college football playoff, and so to go on the road, beat A&M, to beat Ohio State on New Year's Eve, to beat Ole Miss, the last remaining SEC champ, and again. I don't think you can say they outplayed Indiana, but they certainly were in position to win that game late. The Mark Fletcher run, 57 yards, the Malachi Toney touchdown catch. I mean, they were in position to do what they needed to do. And listen, I know people are going to criticize Mario Cristobal to the high heavens for everything that always happens, but go back and look at that game and look at that team. The most physical team in college football outside of Indiana, dominated the line of scrimmage against Ohio State, the best team in the SEC, Texas A&M, on and on. By the way, when I say the best team in the SEC, I'm giving credit to Ole Miss there. I'm not saying Texas A&M is. I'm just bringing it up because he has built a juggernaut, and I think it's absolutely sustainable going forward when you look at this program. One, there are just going to be wins to be had in the ACC, but two, they're getting Darian Mensah. We talked about it on the most recent show. But at the end of the day, you add Darian Mensah. This thing is not slowing down, and I think Miami is going to be right back in a similar position next year. I don't think you could say they'll be back playing for a championship, but this program isn't going anywhere. They found the right coach, the right circumstance. I don't think he's got enough credit for how much he rebuilt that program. The program wasn't good for 20 years. Was, really a player or two away from potentially winning a national championship. Before that, Jamari Sharp. I don't know why I was thinking of Namari Burnett, who's the Michigan basketball player. Jamari Sharp, not Namari Burnett, Jamari Sharp interception to seal the victory. So Indiana wins the national championship. Couple big picture thoughts here as we switch gears. And I do want to hear some of the comments in the chat. What do people think? All of that. But as I sit here and think about Indiana, a few things. One, listen, one thing that is kind of a personal pet peeve of mine is feeling the need to immediately historically contextualize everything that happens in the world of sports. Oh, Luka won an MVP. Where does he rank on the? It's like, who the F cares? Like, who cares, right? And so I don't want to do is the Indiana the greatest team ever, first 16-0 team since Yale in 1807 or whatever the heck it was. I don't know. I don't know if Indiana is the greatest team ever. I think part of those conversations happen well after the fact. I mean, part of the conversation about the Miami 2001 national championship team is how good all of those players were after they left Miami. Ed Reed, Hall of Famer. Andre Johnson, Hall of Famer. Vince Wilfork, Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee, Jeremy Shockey. I mean, we're talking about some of the all-time greats in college football. And so I just bring it up because I don't feel like today's the day to do this with Indiana. And here's the other thing. I don't think Indiana fans care either, right? It's funny. I remember, I don't mean to always make it about UConn, but when UConn won the 2023 national title, everyone's sitting there, is UConn a blue blood? Are they not a blue blood? It's like, no one in Connecticut cares. UConn is the best program in college basketball over the last 25 years, most people's memories. And no school in America at that time would have traded history with them. And I think if you're an Indiana fan, you don't care about, well, how do we rank with 2018 LSU? Who cares? Doesn't matter. Who cares if Joe Burrow could hypothetically beat you? It doesn't matter. Joe Burrow wasn't playing for Miami. He didn't play for Oregon this year. He didn't play for Purdue this year. You're the national champions, and it doesn't. What matters to Indiana fans is this. This is the greatest single turnaround we've ever seen. And listen, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this is so obvious. Like it was funny. I was telling my Fox Sports radio producer this. I actually find the conversation about is Indiana the greatest turnaround story in the history of college football? I kind of find that story boring because I think that was established probably about a month ago. I think once you win the Big Ten, once you go from the worst program in the history of FBS football, all of a sudden you are now in the playoff. You are now a Big Ten champion. Listen, I guess you had to cap it with a national championship, but this is the greatest turnaround that we have ever seen, okay? The bottom line is a couple things. One, losing his program in the history of college football. I think the crazy stat is this. I've seen a couple crazy stats. One, first of all, Indiana had never had a 10-win season until Kurt Cignetti came. This isn't like, oh, they were good in the 60s or they were good in the 80s. Like, let me put it this way. Like, even Army was like national championship good. Indiana was never good ever at any point. They were the game. If you were in the Big Ten, you scheduled them for homecoming because they were an automatic win. They were the game. If you were an Ohio State or a Michigan fan, you scheduled a trip around a visit to Indiana because you knew it was an automatic win. And so for them to go ahead and compete for and win a national championship, this is the greatest turnaround ever. It just is. There is no more debate. First, they had never had a 10-win season ever. I think the crazy stat that I saw on Tuesday morning here, how about this? Indiana had 6 bowl wins in history. In other words, 6 postseason wins outside of the Big Ten championship game in school history. We all know prior to the Rose Bowl win on January 1st, their most recent bowl win was the 1991 Copper Bowl. I don't know how much you guys all remember about that. But 6 total bowl wins ever. 3 came this year. Rose Bowl, Peach Bowl, national championship game. So it's the most incredible story we've ever seen, the most incredible comeback we've ever seen. And Cignetti is the most incredible story in his own right that we've ever seen. 51 years old before he gets his first head coaching job. Listen, maybe someday the story of him and Nick Saban will be written. I don't know what it is, but it is very clear those guys, I don't know if they don't like each other, but they're not best buddies. Saban doesn't hype him up the way he does Lane Kiffin and Mario Cristobal and all his former assistants. But what Cignetti did is absolutely unbelievable. And to put a bow on this, and I think this is an important, relevant point, is that it now, in my opinion, I think the legacy of Indiana football, it now gives hope to everybody. And listen, was it the perfect set of circumstances? Right head coach, right time, brought the right players with him. Remember, D'Angelo Pons, Elijah Surratt, Aiden Fisher, the dude who blocked the punt, Kamara. They all came with him from James Madison. But in this era, in NIL, with NIL, was able to bring those guys. They didn't have to sit out for a year like they did back in the day. Right coach, right time, right moment. But I'll tell you this. What I think this shows to me is if Indiana can win a national championship in college football, guess what? Just about anybody in the Power Four can. Now, maybe that's a little bit of an extreme example, but I certainly think if you are a fan of any team in the Big Ten, any team in the SEC, you have to feel like, why not us? Why not us? Because again, these alumni bases, these fan bases are huge. NIL has changed things. The transfer portal has changed things. Now, maybe over time, things pivot. Maybe we get some settlement with the portal and maybe not everybody can go all the time, whatever. The point I'm trying to make, if you are, say, a Kentucky fan, and I remember Kentucky with Mark Stoops during the season, it was so hopeless and you just felt like it's going to be terrible and we're stuck with this guy forever. You got out of that contract. You have this new head coach. Why not Kentucky? Listen, I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship next year, but right coach, right time, right moment, offensive guy. He clearly can recruit because they brought in a ton of talent. Why not Kentucky? Vandy coming off a 10-win season, just signed the number 1 recruit in America and Jared Curtis. Why not the Vanderbilt Commodores? In the Big Ten, if Indiana can do it, I'm sorry. Wisconsin can do it. Purdue can do it. Minnesota can do it. It is an unbelievable story. And to me, that is the ultimate legacy of the Indiana Hoosiers, is that if Indiana can do this, it means that absolutely anybody else can. And I think let me put a bow on this. I think it makes this era of college. Listen, I'm a college football diehard, right? Love it. I wasn't in favor of going to a 12-team playoff, but I do think as we get deeper into this 12-team playoff era, I hope we stay at 12. We won't, but I hope we do. I only bring it up because, as we get deeper into this era, as we get deeper into the portal NIL era, I think what's clear, the talent is spread so across college football that I think it makes for a more interesting product overall. It's not like I'm not breaking any incredible news by saying this Indiana story could not have happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago. I don't know if Miami could have done it this quick 15 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. Because, yeah, there's a lot of guys that were there and, from the beginning that got recruited to Miami, Ruben Bain, Francis Mauioga, all those guys. But Carson Beck couldn't come 10 years ago and play right away. Keelan Marion, their best wide receiver, maybe couldn't have come play. So I'm just bringing it up because there's just a lot of stuff about this era that I really like. Like, as I was watching the pregame, I had picked Georgia over Indiana in my national championship game. I was like, yeah, the Georgia story's cool, but we've seen it. We've seen the Ohio State story. We've seen the Alabama story. It's pretty cool to have Indiana versus Miami in this national championship game. And I don't feel like anything was missing because Ohio State wasn't there. Georgia wasn't there. Bama wasn't there. And as a matter of fact, it's kind of interesting. Obviously, Indiana beat Alabama to get there. Miami beat Ohio State to get there. And you can't argue that they earned their spots in that national championship game. So just some quick thoughts on the game. Unbelievable game, unbelievable finish. But I think college football, the on-the-field product is in as healthy of a place as it's been in a long time. Everyone's going to criticize the portal and NIL and transfer. None of it's perfect. I don't need to hear more argument about the calendar, all that. But what I will say is I think this sport is in as good a shape as it's been in a while. This was as fun of a season as I can remember. The ratings reflect that you guys care more about college football than ever before. Certainly the numbers on this YouTube channel reflect that as well. And I cannot wait for next season because I don't think this thing is slowing down anytime soon. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. Speaking of next season, way too early top 25s are already out. And I will tell you this. I already got takes on other people's takes. And we'll start talking and looking ahead to next year. Indiana is your national champion. Who's the next Indiana? We'll take a quick break, talk way too early top 25s. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, let's be real. Nothing ages you faster this time of year than following your favorite college football team. The recruiting, transfer portal, NIL, maybe you had a coaching change, maybe you're even getting ready for a postseason game. Well, unless you're Notre Dame, another conversation for another day. But it leaves wrinkles and does a number on a man's face. That's why, folks, I use Tiege Hanley. Yes, I've been telling you about Tiege Hanley. I started using it about a month ago now, and I'll tell you what, I look better and my skin feels better even during this hectic time of year. Among my favorite products, the Super Serum and Eye Serum, they've been legit game changers. Fine lines, softer. Under eye bags, way less brutal. Yeah, I might be up all hours of the night watching all sorts of games, but with Tiege Hanley, you'd never know it. What I love about Tiege, everything they make is high quality and designed for us guys. They send you exactly what you need each month, so you don't have to wander around a store pretending that you know what all these labels mean. By the way, ladies, this time of year, this makes the perfect gift for the fella in your life who needs help, your dad, your friend, your coworker, whoever looks like he might, have a couple wrinkles rolling in from watching too much film in the middle of the night. Right now, this is what I love about Tiege. They're giving listeners of the Aaron Torres pod a special offer, 40% off your first box plus a free $20 gift. That's an insane deal for how high these quality products are. All you got to do is just click that link below. That's 40% off your first box plus a $20 free gift. An insane offer. Just click the link below. Football might drain you emotionally, but Tiege keeps you looking really good. Even as, again, you're breaking down film late at night. You're not a coach, but you know what? Tiege Hanley's going to make you look good anyway. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Let's go ahead. I want to get to some questions, Matt. I'll just pull them really quick. I kind of know what I'm looking for here. Deliverance and Darren are the two that are very aggressive in the chat today. I love the questions, love the comments. Deliverance says Indiana was the best team, even though they were both winners in a certain way. Darren reflects what I said. Congrats, Indiana. Well done. You've laid the blueprint. Darren, a Kentucky fan, says it's time for Big Blue to rise in the rankings as well. This is interesting. Let's see here. The Alice Howard. Congrats to Indiana, a team without a 5-star player, Big Ten 3 in a row. Couple notes on that. One, I do think that's a very interesting, probably a part of this that we should discuss is the fact that, there was always just this way that you had to build a team. You had to have all these 5 stars. And, if you didn't stack top 5 recruiting class on top 5 recruiting class, you could never win at the highest level. Really, and I'm not going to get too off the beaten track here, but that was why Jimbo Fisher was hired at Texas A&M. And that was why, because it was he can get the players that you need to win. And obviously it's clear that you also need the right coach, even if you have the right players. But what Cignetti did is so interesting because, yes, it has never really been done before in this manner. Now, Michigan a few years ago, they didn't have quite the recruiting chops, but they had so many dudes that were in their 5th and 6th years because of COVID. This Indiana thing is so different. Big Ten 3 in a row. My buddy Cole Kublik was the one that put out the stat on the Big Ten. I believe it's the first time since 41, 42, 43. So basically World War II era that the Big Ten has won 3 in a row. And I'll tell you what, I actually think that's a perfect way to transition into what's next because the season is done. And like any offseason, there is a top 25 that has come out. So we're going to talk about the way too early top 25 in a minute. Producer Matt is producing the crap out of this show. Before we get to the way too early top 25, guess what? If you want to make a bet on next season, there's only one place to do it. You got to go to Circa Casino, Circa Resort, Circa Sportsbook, okay? So Circa, I've told you all about Circa. They are the official hotel and casino partners of the Aaron Torres pod. Circa Sportsbook in Vegas, the biggest sportsbook in the world. But guess what? You can see it right there. Circa has opened up a brand new sportsbook at the Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. Okay, so all of the great hospitality, amenities, all of that of Circa Sportsbook in Vegas, it has now come to Franklin, Kentucky at the Mint Kentucky Downs. And I love this place. I swung by there about a month ago. It's about 40 minutes from Nashville, 20 or so minutes from Bowling Green. Best place to watch games, all of that. Anything you want to watch, anything you want to bet on, you can do it at the brand new Circa Sportsbook at the Mint Kentucky Downs. Should also mention producer Matt and I will be out there for March Madness. So obviously we'll get you some details as we get closer to March. But just bring it up because the Mint Kentucky Sportsbook, or Mint Kentucky Downs, the Circa Sportsbook. Love working with Circa and the Mint. With that said, let's go ahead and switch gears. So as I mentioned, every single time that a regular season ends, you know what it means? It means that it's never too early to look ahead to next year. And listen, as has become tradition, way too early top 25s get dropped basically the day after the national championship game. Now, it's interesting because I saw a bunch late Monday into Tuesday, but it feels like the On3 way too early top 25 was really the one that gained the most traction. So I want to go ahead and talk about it because I already got gripes, okay? But before we even get into it, let me say this, is that usually, historically, this is what makes this year different. Historically, when we look at way too early top 25s the day after a season, usually it's way too early. I don't know that we can say that anymore. Rosters are basically set at this point. The season now ends so late that, think about this, NFL draft deadline is done. You had to declare by now to be in the NFL draft with the exception of Indiana and Miami players. So obviously like Fernando Mendoza is going to declare here in the next day or two, okay? But NFL draft deadlines are done. The portal is closed, and there is no spring portal. So rosters are basically set. Like in the past, and this certainly happens in college basketball as well, we've been able to say like, well, it's a lot's going to change between now and September. Actually, not that much is going to change from here on out. And so let's go ahead and get into the way too early top 25. And what I'm just going to do is rip through every team that On3 has in their top 20. And then from there, we'll get into just some thoughts on it overall. But here is On3's way too early top 25. The first 5 in order Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Texas 3, Notre Dame 4. The defending champion Indiana Hoosiers are 5. Number 6 is Oregon, of course, bringing back Dante Moore. 7, Texas Tech. 8, Texas A&M. 9, the national runners-up, Miami. 10, the Oklahoma Sooners. 11, Michigan, first-year head coach Kyle Whittingham. 12, LSU, first-year head coach Lane Kiffin. 13, the BYU Cougars. 14, Penn State, also first-year head coach. 15, Ole Miss, technically as a first-year head coach in Pete Golding. And then 16 through 20, yet another first-year head coach in Morgan Scalley at Utah. Alabama at 17, Washington at 18, USC at 19, Tennessee at 20. And then just to round it out, I didn't have Matt make a graphic, but 21 is Houston, 22 is Penn State, 23 is SMU, 24 is Penn State's former head coach James Franklin, and 25 is the South Carolina Gamecocks. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the way too early top 25, this via On3. And I'm just going to share some thoughts, and I want to be clear. I'm not here to criticize anyone at On3. I'm just here to share my personal thoughts on why I don't really think their top 25 is all that good. So let's start right at the top. So listen, this isn't a knock on Ohio State or Georgia. I'm actually kind of surprised, though, that Ohio State and Georgia are 1 and 2, and let me explain why. It feels very obvious to me. First of all, Ohio State at number 1, I think, is solely about we know their quarterback, Julian Sayin, and they have the best player in college football, Jeremiah Smith. But let's not forget, they lost a ton off that defense. They lost the Carnell Tate, who frankly might have been the second best wide receiver in college football. And I think they actually did lose some depth through the portal, lost a lot of guys. You know, Quincy Porter was going to be the next great wide receiver. We'll get to him in a minute. But I bring it up because, listen, this isn't tear down Ohio State. It's not even tear down Georgia, the 2-time reigning SEC champ, who, oh, by the way, has not won a college football playoff game since 2022. That win over TCU, the national championship game I was at, that was terrible. But what it's really about is this. I thought we all had kind of established that there were 3 teams that were all in next season for 2025, 2026, into 2027. Texas, Oregon, and Notre Dame. So let's get into those 3 because to me, feels like those are the teams that it's like all the chips are in the middle. And I know what people will say, and I'm not even saying I would necessarily have Texas at number 1, but at the same time, I understand coming into this year, they were number 1 and you're going to overrate them again. Isn't it obvious, though, that they're clearly all in for next year? They returned Arch Manning a quarterback. I was critical of Arch throughout the regular season, but there's no doubt that he got better as the season went on, played great in the bowl game against Michigan. But they went out and spent a bunch of money to surround him with talent. Cam Coleman, arguably the best player in the transfer portal, committed to Texas at wide receiver. Hollywood Smothers, elite running back from NC State, committed to Alabama, flipped to Texas in the portal. And listen, the defense needs some work. Will Muschamp is in as the defensive coordinator, but Colin Simmons might be, he actually might be the best player in college football. He's unbelievable. So I was a little surprised. I thought Texas would be number 1, maybe number 2. Also Oregon. Oregon's returning the guy who will be projected as the number 1 pick in the 2027 NFL draft. Not saying it'll happen. A lot of stuff is going to change. Nobody had Fernando Mendoza at this time last year as the number 1 pick in the draft. It doesn't change the fact, though, that Oregon, Dante Moore is back. DeCorian Moore is back. No relation, obviously. Evan Stewart, who was supposed to be their best wide receiver, was out all this year. And this is the thing about Oregon that I kept saying all season long. I kept saying Oregon's ahead of schedule. Remember, last year, they were the number 1 seed in the college football playoff with Dylan Gabriel. They lose to Ohio State. They basically lost everybody off of that team. And so the notion, they were a year ahead of schedule this year. And to me, I think that they are going into next year with essentially a natty or bust type situation. I'll also say this. I know people are going to criticize Notre Dame. I know the schedule isn't as tough as a Big Ten or an SEC team. Notre Dame is really, really, really good. CJ Carr's coming back. I think the thing that stands out to me about Notre Dame is they didn't take a lot of guys in the portal, but the guys that they took are really good. They took, I just mentioned him, Quincy Porter was a 5-star wide receiver, was at Ohio State, would have been a backup next year. He's going to be wide receiver 1. He might be like the most talented wide receiver they've had in a long time. Mylan Graham, another transfer from Ohio State, should be really good. Keon Keeley, transfer edge player from Alabama. Wild story there. He was committed to Notre Dame, flipped to Alabama in what would have been Marcus Freeman, going into Marcus Freeman's second year, I believe. It was Nick Saban's last year. So he is going to come transfer over. And I do think there is something to, one, with the schedule they have, they should be in good shape. No USC. They're going to add Miami, or they still have Miami. They add BYU. So they're going to win enough games to get in. And I do think there will be the chip on their shoulder type thing after this year. Marcus Freeman even said it on the broadcast on Monday night, is like, basically like, next year there's no excuses, and we know we have to put ourselves in a better position. So to me, it feels like those are the three teams that are all in on 2026. I was surprised to see Ohio State and Georgia ranked ahead of them, but we'll see what happens from there. By the way, I didn't even mention this, Matt. We don't have anything for it, but I respect people putting Indiana at number 5, because to me, I will say this, is that Indiana, in my opinion, has earned that right. Josh Hoover, I think, was the best quarterback in the transfer that's available. He's coming in to replace Fernando Mendoza. A little bit of a sad downer, by the way. Mendoza's brother, Alberto, actually entered the transfer portal on Tuesday right after the national championship game. So, bummer for the Mendoza family, but I just bring it up because I respect the folks at On3 for basically saying, you know what, we have to show Indiana some respect, put them at number 5. Let's keep going. A team that is interesting to me, I'm a little surprised they're so high, the Michigan Wolverines. And listen, we've talked a lot about Kyle Whittingham. I have nothing but respect for what he's done. And it is interesting, right? Because every time I talk about Michigan, I say one thing. I say they kind of won 9 games this year in a season where I don't even know that their coach cared about coaching football. Seemed to have a lot of interest on Instagram and social media and doing everything other than coaching football. They still won 9 games. Bryce Underwood is coming back, and Kyle Whittingham kind of did something pretty cool that I don't think a lot of people fully realize. He was able to retain essentially all of the players that Michigan wanted. Remember, 3 of their starters on the O-line. 3 of the starters on the O-line were redshirt freshmen, so young O-line. Andrew Marsh, the star wide receiver, is back. Jordan Marshall, the running back, is back. He was basically able to keep everybody that he wanted, and then he added several marquee players off of his last Utah team. Smith Snowden is an elite defensive back, all Big 12 defensive back. John Henry Daly was a first-team All-American at Utah who is now following him. So it's a tough one because on paper they look like a top 10 team, especially coming off a 9-win season. But I do wonder, first-year head coach, first-year quarterback, schedule, by the way, is a bear at Oregon, at Ohio State, Indiana at home, Oklahoma in the out-of-conference at home. So it's just one. I don't know that I have any definitive, they're way overrated or way underrated. I think I was just surprised a little bit to see them at number 11. Speaking of first-year head coaches, I'll be real. I think LSU at number 12 is a very surprising one to me. No disrespect. Listen, Lane Kiffin, I'll give him credit. When we did our over-under win total predictions before the season, I said Ole Miss, I believe, was 8.5 before the year started. I said that's way too high. They've lost way too much. And so the fact that he got Ole Miss to 11-1 in the regular season, for all the criticism, we got to give him credit, got Ole Miss to its first ever college football playoff. I also do feel like number 12 feels a little bit aggressive to me. Am I crazy? You take over a brand new program. I know LSU wasn't terrible. They weren't great either. The defense was actually the best part of their team. And oh, by the way, let's not forget that most of that defense is in fact, graduating. And so a lot of the key pieces on defense are gone. The offense was not very good, completely rebuilt O-line. And here's the other thing. Sam Leavitt is really good. I don't know if he's quite as good as everybody's making him out to be. And then I'll also add this on top of everything else with Sam Leavitt, is that for me, with Sam Leavitt, like he's going to be, he might not participate in spring football. He had a foot injury that he had surgery on, and I don't think he's going to participate in spring. So I know they have a couple backups, Landon Clark, Husan Longstreet, former 5-star, all that. I just sit there and say that feels a little bit aggressive to me. I respect LSU, and I think Lane Kiffin is a great coach. I've been critical of how he left Ole Miss. I can't deny that he's a great coach. Having him at number 12 feels a little bit high to me. I'm surprised by this one. The BYU Cougars at number 13. Listen, this is one I'm not too high, I'm not too low. It just feels like BYU has been consistently disrespected in all of these polls. Remember, they went 11-2 last year, and I understand part of it, part of it had to do with, part of it had to do with the fact that they lost their quarterback late in the spring. Jake Retzlaff leaves for obvious reasons. But I just bring it up because they went 11-2 last year. Were unranked to start the season. Now they're 12-2. Credit to the pollsters for actually giving them credit and actually having them in this way too early top 25. Them and Texas Tech should again be the class of the Big 12. It's hard for me to argue for anyone else at this moment. We'll see what happens with Texas Tech. They do lose a lot as well. They add Brennan Sorsby. It doesn't feel like they made quite the impact at other spots besides at quarterback, but we'll see what happens with Texas Tech. But BYU having them at 13, I respect On 3 for actually putting them as high as they did. I'll say this, number 15, Ole Miss. I'm not saying it's too high. I'm not saying it's too low. I'm saying it's interesting. I would assume if you have Ole Miss at number 15, the assumption is that the voters do not believe that Trinidad Chambliss will get that extra year of eligibility. Now, we've talked a lot about Trinidad Chambliss, and we've talked about his eligibility claim. If you are someone who does not believe that, if you're someone who believes like college football, the NCAA doesn't do anything, blah, 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 you should actually be rooting against Trinidad Chambliss to get the extra year of eligibility. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. What I am saying is he really doesn't have very much of a case. And we've talked about it, but essentially the argument is that so he took a red shirt at Ferris State. Then on top of that, his second year at Ferris State, he got tonsillitis. And so they're basically arguing he should get a medical red shirt, even though he was the backup and not playing. And there's no proof that he even went in for any type of medical treatment for the issue. So I just bring it up because, I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me. If he wants to play college football, he should try. But I just assume that if the pollsters have Ole Miss at number 15, that the assumption is that he will not be back at Ole Miss next year. If he's back, I think they're a legit top 10 team, maybe top 5 team, right up there with Texas and Georgia as the favorites in the SEC. We'll see what happens. I know there's still some back and forth with players leaving Ole Miss and all that. Pete Golding has a monster first roster, though. I do think it really does come down to Trinidad Chambliss being in that lineup. Finally, a couple more as we get in the 15 to 20 range. Alabama at number 17. I mean, you talk about, I'm trying to be fair here. I'm not going to do it's January 20th. We got 8 months to pick apart Alabama, but you're talking about a situation, this program, I mean, what was the stat? What was it, about 13 straight years Alabama was ranked number 1 in the country at some point? To be number 17 in a way too early top 25, that's crazy to me. And I'm not even criticizing. I don't know who you put them ahead of. First-year quarterback, Ty Simpson's gone. It's either going to be Austin Mack or Keelan Russell. I actually think it's going to be addition by subtraction at some of the, along the offensive line specifically. 17 feels a little low to me. I'm just more amazed that that is where Alabama is. Not even a criticism, just a reality. This is how far, if you want to call it that this program has fallen. If they're number 17, that means that they're coming into next year, basically the assumption being, and of course I'm working under the assumption there is no additional college football playoff expansion. But if they're number 17, that means that there's a very good chance that, they're not a playoff team next year, or not even really in contention to be a playoff team, which is kind of crazy. Finally, the last team that stands out, I think 2026, it's a make or break year for Lincoln Riley at USC. if I can defend Lincoln Riley, I actually think having them at number 18 or 17, what are they, 18, Matt? 19? What are they? 19 in the way too early top 25. I'll defend Lincoln Riley. I actually think that's too low. Jaden Mayava will be back as essentially a third-year starter quarterback. Now, they don't even have, as we record here, a defensive coordinator, but the defense has been improved the last few years. This is kind of the year that Lincoln Riley has to get it going, though. I would have thought if I had just done this myself and we didn't do a way too early top 25 at Aaron Torres online, I would have had USC more in the 11, 12, 13 range where Michigan, LSU are than I would in the 19 to 20 range. Same time, it's a make or break year. We've talked a lot about it. But with Lincoln Riley, I really think there are moments in time with every program where it's an inflection point of you got to get it done or not. And I keep saying this, but I think canceling the Notre Dame game, I was surprised how many USC alums, USC boosters, and people that are involved with USC football that are not necessarily inside the program, Keyshawn Johnson, former players, things like that were furious about that. So make or break year for USC. USC coming in at number 19 in On3's way too early top 25. All right, really quickly, couple thoughts before we get out of here. You know, Jared Jones says the Big Ten runs runs college football. I think there's no doubt. And one, I'm just curious, is it 4 straight next year? Listen, Oregon, Oregon could be the 4th Big Ten team in 4 years, 4 different schools that wins it. Notre Dame is obviously not a Big Ten team, but obviously they're in the Big Ten footprint. If you have them ranked number 1, number 2, I wouldn't be surprised. And then to Jared's point, Ohio State brings back quite a bit as well. So Ohio State, Big Ten, I don't think there's any doubt they run college football right now. Deliverance agrees with me. He says Texas, Notre Dame, or Oregon will still be really tough to beat. Here you go. Deliverance also says, remember the Washington Huskies were in the middle of the Big Ten this year, but they had an outstanding bowl win. The conference looks very tough right now. This is funny. Worldwide Liberty says New Mexico is the next Indiana. You heard it here first. Maybe so. All right, I'll tell you what. I'm a little bit under the weather. I don't feel great. And we just did 50 minutes of content. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here. If you're not subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, please make sure to do so. New clips, new videos going up every single day. Really do appreciate your support of the show. Should mention, I know it's a random Tuesday in January, but the show just grew exponentially over the course of the college football season. So for anybody, all of you who are tuning in right now, tuning in on tape delay, tuning in via podcast, the numbers this college football season were bananas. So thank you for everybody who consumed. We'll still be talking college football, but obviously over these next couple months, transition to a lot more basketball. Could be back as early as Wednesday morning. No, there's a couple big games tonight, including a top 20 matchup at Bud Walton Arena, Vandy at Arkansas. So we'll probably be back on Wednesday, but that remains to be seen. Time for me to go. But again, just want to thank you one last time for the support during the college football season. I got to go back and look it up. I believe on YouTube, I think 4 of our 6 biggest months ever were September, October, November, December. I'll have to double check on that, but we cannot do it without your support. Time to go. Thank you. And we'll be back probably on Wednesday. Shout out to Tor and Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. We will be back probably Wednesday morning, certainly Thursday.